Billionaire dining with his fiancée, until his ex walked in with the child he denied for years. Have you ever witnessed someone's entire world collapse in a single moment? That instant when all their carefully constructed lies come crashing down around them? When the person they tried to forget returns to deliver a truth so powerful it feels almost divine. If you've ever been underestimated, discarded, or told you weren't enough, this story will set your soul on fire. If you believe that our choices eventually find their way back to us, you'll want to stay until the very end. What happens when a man who abandoned his pregnant girlfriend for wealth and success comes face to face with the child he never knew? And how does a woman find the strength to forgive the unforgivable? Stay with me to witness a journey of redemption that will make you believe in second chances. The Sterling Tower pierced Chicago's skyline like an exclamation point. 68 stories of gleaming glass and steel, a monument to ambition and wealth. On its rooftop, La Cille Restaurant offered the city's most exclusive dining experience, where reservations were secured months in advance and discretion came with the astronomical prices. Tonight, Alexander Alex Harrington occupied the best table, the one with uninterrupted views of Lake Michigan and the glittering cityscape. At 48, he cut an imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with just enough silver threading through his dark hair to make him look distinguished rather than old. His custom Tom Ford suit fit him perfectly, as did the role of corporate titan he'd been playing for the past 2 decades. Across from him sat Victoria Langford, his fiancée of 6 months. At 42, Victoria possessed the kind of polished beauty that came from generations of good breeding and meticulous self-care. Her gallery in the Gold Coast neighborhood showcased emerging artists to Chicago's elite, making her both culturally relevant and socially connected. The perfect partner for a man of Alex's stature. To us, Alex said, raising his crystal flute of Krug champagne. And to the future. Victoria smiled, the enormous princess-cut diamond on her left hand catching the light as she lifted her glass. 3 months until the Hamptons. Mothers already terrorizing the wedding planner. Alex chuckled. The Langfords have a reputation to uphold. As do the Harringtons now, she replied with a playful arch of her eyebrow. The irony wasn't lost on Alex. There had been no Harrington reputation when he was growing up in Blue Island, the son of a factory worker and a waitress. He'd clawed his way out through sheer determination, state college on scholarships, then an MBA, followed by a series of increasingly successful ventures in tech and real estate. Harrington Global now employed thousands, with offices in 12 countries and a valuation that had landed him on the Forbes list for 8 consecutive years. He'd earned this view, this woman, this life. The maitre d' approached their table with an apologetic expression. Mr. Harrington, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt your evening. There's a lady here who insists on speaking with you. She says it's urgent, family business. Alex frowned. His parents had passed years ago, and his sister lived in California with her husband and children. Did she give a name? Sarah Thompson, sir. The name hit Alex like a physical blow. His hand tightened around the stem of his champagne flute, and for a moment, he feared it might shatter in his grip. Alex! Victoria's voice seemed to come from far away. Who is Sarah Thompson? Before he could answer, a woman stepped into view behind the maitre d'. She was in her early 40s, with honey-brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a modest navy dress that spoke of practicality rather than fashion, and her face, once so familiar Alex could have traced it from memory, showed the gentle weathering of time and worry. But it wasn't Sarah who made Alex's world tilt on its axis. It was the boy beside her, 11, maybe 12 years old, lanky with that awkward grace of early adolescence. Dark hair that fell across his forehead in the same unruly way Alex's had at that age. And eyes, storm cloud blue eyes that Alex saw in the mirror every morning, now staring at him with cautious curiosity. Hello, Alex. Sarah's voice was steady, though he could detect the slight tremor beneath her composure. It's been a long time. Victoria's gaze darted between Alex and the newcomers, her social training momentarily abandoned in the face of genuine shock. Alex, what is this? Alex couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't process the reality standing before him. Sarah placed her hand gently on the boy's shoulder. This is Ethan, your son. If you've ever seen someone get exactly what they deserve, hit that like button right now. The restaurant seemed to freeze around them. Conversations at nearby tables faltered as Chicago's elite sensed the unfolding drama. A waiter paused mid-pour at a neighboring table, the expensive Bordeaux momentarily forgotten. My son, Alex repeated, the words foreign on his tongue. Yes, Sarah said simply. He's 11 years old. The math wasn't difficult. 12 years ago, Alex had been on the verge of his first major breakthrough. A venture capital deal that would transform him from struggling entrepreneur to serious player. When Sarah had told him she was pregnant, he'd panicked. They'd been college sweethearts who'd stayed together through his early failures, her nursing school, their tiny Boston apartment with the leaky ceiling and unreliable heat. But a child would anchor him when he needed to be mobile, would drain resources when every dollar needed to go back into the business. In his most shameful moment, one that had haunted him through subsequent success, he'd accused her of trying to trap him, had demanded a paternity test, then left before it could be arranged, had convinced himself the child wasn't his, or that if it was, Sarah would be better off without him dragging them into his chaotic rise. He'd sent money anonymously through lawyers for years, salving his conscience without ever reaching out, never asking, never knowing. Mom said you might not believe us at first, Ethan said, his voice soft but clear. But I look like the pictures she showed me. Victoria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. This is insane. Alex, tell me this isn't true. But Alex couldn't deny what was standing before him. The resemblance was undeniable, not just physical traits but mannerisms. The way Ethan stood with his weight shifted slightly to one side, the slight furrow between his brows as he assessed the situation. Pure Harrington through and through. I didn't come for money, Sarah said, addressing both Alex and Victoria. Or for revenge. Ethan's been asking about his father. He's a good kid, smart, kind, loves baseball and building things. He deserves to know you even if it's just once. But I won't force anything. She turned to leave, Ethan's small hand in hers. That's when Alex found his voice. Wait. He stood, ignoring Victoria's sharp intake of breath. He walked over, knelt to Ethan's level. Up close, the resemblance was even more striking. The shape of his ears, the set of his jaw, even the slight cleft in his chin that Alex had inherited from his own father. Hey buddy, I'm Alex. And if what your mom says is true, and God help me, I think it is, then I've got a lot of making up to do. Tears welled in the boy's eyes. You really didn't know about me? The question cut deeper than any business rival's attack ever had. I was scared, Alex admitted, his voice cracking, stupid and scared. But I'm here now. From the corner of his eye, Alex saw Victoria gather her purse and wrap. She paused beside him, her voice low. I'll take a car home. Call me when you've sorted this out. She left with quiet dignity, her heels clicking across the restaurant floor as conversations resumed in hushed tones around them. Tomorrow, this scene would be all over Chicago's social circles. But in this moment, all Alex could see was the boy in front of him, his son, and the woman who had raised him alone. Can we sit? He asked Sarah, gesturing to the table he'd just abandoned. Please. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. For a little while. Ethan has school tomorrow. As they settled at the table, the champagne now flat, the celebratory mood evaporated. Alex studied the boy who was studying him with equal intensity. You play baseball? He asked, remembering Sarah's words. Ethan nodded. Shortstop, and pitcher sometimes. He has a wicked curveball, Sarah added, a hint of pride breaking through her reserve. Takes after his grandfather. Alex's father had pitched minor league ball before factory work and family responsibilities ended that dream. It was a connection Alex had never considered. His father's athletic gifts, skipping a generation to appear in a grandson he'd never known existed. What position did you play? Ethan asked. Second base, Alex replied. Though not very well. I was better at the business side, keeping stats, organizing the schedule. Mom says I get that from you too. I'm team captain this year. The conversation flowed more easily than Alex could have imagined, Ethan's initial wariness giving way to enthusiastic descriptions of his life. His school in the suburbs, his best friend Marcus, the robot they were building for a science competition, his collection of baseball cards that included some vintage ones from his other grandfather. Sarah spoke less, watching the interaction with guarded eyes. When Ethan excused himself to use the restroom, she finally addressed what hung between them. You knew, she said quietly. You knew I was pregnant, and you walked away. Shame burned through Alex. The money came through your lawyers, yes. No contact, no questions about him, just monthly deposits. Sarah's voice held no bitterness, just stated fact. I used it for his education fund. We didn't need it to live on. You raised him alone? She nodded. I finished nursing school, got a good job at Northwestern Memorial. We have a small house in Evanston. It's not fancy, but it's home. Alex thought of his penthouse overlooking the lake, the vacation homes in Aspen, and the Bahamas private jet that waited at his convenience. All the trappings of success he'd pursued so relentlessly, at the cost of knowing his own son. Why now, Sarah? After all this time, she met his gaze directly, and he saw the strength that had allowed her to build a life without him. Because Ethan asked. He's old enough now to understand that relationships are complicated. Old enough to handle disappointment if that's what comes of this. And because she hesitated. Because despite everything, I remember who you were before ambition consumed you. That man would have wanted to know his son. Ethan returned, sliding back into his seat with the easy confidence of a child who has been consistently loved. Mom, can we show him the picture? Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out a worn photograph. She handed it to Alex, who found himself looking at a younger version of himself and Sarah, standing on a beach at sunset. Her head was tucked against his shoulder, both of them laughing at something now lost to time. That's Cape Cod, Alex said softly. The summer after graduation. Before your first startup, Sarah agreed. Ethan keeps it on his nightstand. Alex looked at his son, and felt something crack open inside him. All the justifications, all the rationalizations he'd built over the years to protect himself from the magnitude of what he'd done crumbled in the face of this boy, who had his eyes and his father's arm and his mother's gentle spirit. I've missed so much, he said, not bothering to hide the emotion in his voice. Yes, Sarah agreed. You have. But I'm here now, Alex said, looking directly at Ethan. If you'll let me be. As Alex stared at the photograph, memories flooded back. Memories he'd carefully locked away for 12 years. The salty air of Cape Cod, Sarah's laughter as waves lapped at their ankles. The sense of limitless possibility that had defined their relationship before money and ambition had corrupted everything. I remember that day, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We talked about opening that little tech repair shop near campus. Sarah's eyes softened slightly. You said we'd name it Thompson Harrington Tech, because alphabetically my name should come first. And you said that was ridiculous because Harrington Thompson had better rhythm, Alex finished. For a moment, they were transported back. Two young people in love, with dreams that seemed both modest and magnificent. Before venture capitalists and IPOs. Before pregnancy tests and accusations. Before 12 years of silence. Ethan watched this exchange with keen interest, his eyes darting between his mother and the father he was just beginning to know. You guys met in college, right? Boston University, Sarah confirmed. Your father was giving a presentation in my economics class. He was so nervous he dropped all his notes. I wasn't nervous, Alex protested automatically, then caught himself. Okay, I was terrified, but not because of the presentation. Because I'd noticed your mom 3 weeks earlier and couldn't figure out how to talk to her. The corner of Sarah's mouth twitched upward. Not quite a smile, but close. He asked me to help him reorganize his notes after class. Worst pickup line ever. But it worked, Alex said softly. Their eyes met across the table, and for a fleeting second, Alex could see the echo of what they'd once been to each other. Then Sarah looked away, the moment broken. "It's getting late," she said, glancing at her watch. "Ethan has school tomorrow, and I have an early shift at the hospital." Alex nodded, reluctant to end this unexpected reunion but understanding the boundaries Sarah was establishing. "Of course. Would it be all right if I called you? To arrange another meeting?" Sarah hesitated, then pulled a business card from her purse and wrote something on the back. "My cell number. For Ethan's sake." "For Ethan's sake," Alex repeated, accepting the card like it was something precious. As they stood to leave, Ethan surprised everyone by stepping forward and giving Alex an awkward, brief hug. "It was nice to meet you," he said, his voice muffled against Alex's suit jacket. Alex froze for a moment, then carefully returned the embrace, afraid that if he held too tight, this miracle might disappear. "It was nice to meet you too, Ethan. More than nice. It was everything." Over the boy's head, he caught Sarah's gaze, her expression a complex mixture of caution, protection, and something that might have been hope. After they left, Alex remained at the table, surrounded by the remnants of what was supposed to have been a celebration of his future with Victoria. Instead, it had become a reckoning with the past he'd tried to outrun. He pulled out his phone to call his driver, then paused, staring at the screen. 3 missed calls from Victoria. He should call her back, try to explain. But what could he possibly say? That the woman he'd abandoned 12 years ago had just walked back into his life with the son he'd denied? That looking into Ethan's eyes, his eyes, had shaken the very foundation of the life he'd built? Instead, he texted his driver, then walked to the bar and ordered a scotch. Neat. As he waited, he found himself thinking about the day Sarah had told him she was pregnant. It had been raining, one of those cold Boston downpours that seemed to seep into your bones. Their apartment was drafty, the ancient heating system struggling against the November chill. Alex had just gotten off the phone with Martin Reeves, a venture capitalist who had expressed interest in his fledgling software company. "He wants to meet next week," Alex had announced, bursting through the door, rain dripping from his coat onto the worn carpet. "In San Francisco. This could be it, Sarah. The break we've been waiting for." Sarah had been sitting at their small kitchen table, still in her scrubs from her nursing school clinical rotation. She'd looked up at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "That's great, Alex," she'd said. "I have news too." He'd been so caught up in his own excitement that he barely registered her tone, the mixture of fear and hope that should have told him everything. "I'm pregnant." 2 words that had changed everything. 2 words that should have been the beginning of something beautiful, but instead became the end. He remembered how the room had seemed to tilt, how his grand plans had suddenly felt threatened. A baby meant responsibility, stability, roots, all the things that seemed at odds with the future he'd been envisioning, a future of business trips and late nights, of risk-taking and mobility. "Are you sure?" he'd asked, his voice hollow. "I took 3 tests," she'd replied, "and I'm late. I have a doctor's appointment next week to confirm, but yes, I'm sure." He should have embraced her, should have told her they'd figure it out together. Instead, he'd paced their small living room, running calculations in his head, the cost of prenatal care, of diapers and formula, of childcare, the time that would be diverted from his company, the limitations a family would place on his ambitions. "This isn't the right time," he'd said finally. "We're not ready for this." Sarah's face had fallen, but she'd rallied quickly. "I know it's sooner than we planned, but no, you don't understand. I'm about to get major funding. I'll need to relocate to the West Coast. I'll be working around the clock. This is a disaster." "A disaster?" she'd repeated, her voice small. "Our baby is a disaster?" The argument had escalated from there. Words were said that couldn't be unsaid. Accusations made that couldn't be unmade. In his darkest moment, he'd suggested the pregnancy might not even be his, a cruel, baseless accusation born of panic and selfishness. "How dare you?" Sarah had whispered, tears streaming down her face. "How dare you question my faithfulness when you're the one choosing your company over our family?" "There is no family," he'd shot back. "There's you trying to trap me just when I'm about to make something of myself." He'd stormed out after that, spent the night in his office. When he'd returned the next day to pack for San Francisco, Sarah had been at class. He'd left a note, cold, businesslike, saying he'd be in touch about a paternity test after the baby was born. By the time he returned from California 2 weeks later, with a term sheet for initial funding, Sarah was gone. Her clothes, her books, her nursing school notes all vanished. She'd left her key on the counter and a single line written on the back of his note. "Don't bother with the test. We don't need anything from you." He'd told himself it was for the best. That she'd realized she couldn't raise a child alone and would reach out. That once his company was established, he could provide financial support without derailing his ambitions. That someday, when the timing was right, he'd make amends. But days turned to weeks, weeks to months. His company took off, requiring every ounce of his attention. He hired a private investigator who located Sarah in Chicago, where she'd moved in with her aunt to finish her nursing degree. Through lawyers, he arranged monthly payments, substantial ones, without direct contact. And then, nothing. He built his empire. He dated casually, then seriously. He convinced himself that the hollow feeling in his chest on quiet nights was just the natural loneliness of success. Until tonight, when the past he'd tried to outrun had walked into La Cille in the form of a boy with his eyes and Sarah's gentle spirit. "Sir, your scotch." The bartender's voice pulled Alex back to the present. He thanked the man, took a sip of the amber liquid, and felt it burn a path down his throat. His phone buzzed again. "Victoria." This time he answered. "Alex, what the hell is going on?" Her voice was controlled but tight with anger and confusion. "Who was that woman? And that boy? He called you his father." "Victoria, He paused, unsure how to continue. For the first time in years, the smooth, confident businessman was at a loss for words. "It's complicated." "Then uncomplicate it," she snapped. "Now." He took a deep breath. "Sarah and I were together in college and for a few years after. When my company was just starting to get traction, she told me she was pregnant. I panicked. I walked away." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "You abandoned your pregnant girlfriend?" Victoria finally asked, her voice hollow. "I sent money," he said weakly, hearing how pathetic it sounded even as the words left his mouth. "Money," Victoria repeated. "But you never saw the child. Never even confirmed he was yours." "No." Another long silence. "I need some time to process this, Alex," Victoria said finally. This isn't what I signed up for." "I understand," he replied, though he wasn't sure he did. Everything felt unmoored, as if the foundations of his carefully constructed life were shifting beneath him. After they hung up, Alex finished his scotch and headed for the elevator. As he descended from the rarefied air of La Cille to the street level, he felt as if he were traveling back through time, back to the person he'd been before wealth and success had insulated him from the consequences of his choices. His driver was waiting at the curb, the sleek black Bentley a stark contrast to the taxi Sarah and Ethan had climbed into earlier. As they pulled away from the Sterling Tower, Alex found himself directing the driver not to his penthouse, but to the lakefront. He needed to walk, to think, to breathe. Lake Michigan stretched before him, vast and dark under the night sky. The same lake that Sarah and Ethan could see from their modest home in Evanston. The same water connecting their separate worlds. For the first time in 12 years, Alex Harrington allowed himself to feel the full weight of what he'd done. Not just to Sarah, but to Ethan. To himself. He'd thrown away the chance to watch his son take his first steps, say his first words. He'd missed birthdays and school plays, scraped knees and bedtime stories. All for what? For the empire that now felt hollow in comparison to the simple, genuine hug Ethan had given him before leaving? His phone buzzed with a text. Not Victoria this time, but Janet Winters, his COO. "Bloomberg wants a statement about the Nextech acquisition by tomorrow. Need your input." Once, this would have been the most important thing in his world. Now, it barely registered. Instead, He found himself pulling out the cards Sarah had given him, staring at the neat handwriting on the back. 10 digits that represented a chance he didn't deserve. Before he could overthink it, he typed a message. "Thank you for tonight, for letting me meet Ethan. I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I'd like to see him again, to start making up for lost time. If he wants that too." He hit send before he could change his mind, then continued walking along the lake, the cool night air clearing his head for the first time in what felt like years. 3 minutes later, his phone buzzed with a response. "Ethan has a baseball game Saturday. Evanston West Field. 10 a.m. He'd like you to come." Alex stopped walking, staring at the message as if it might disappear if he blinked. Then, with fingers that weren't quite steady, he typed back, "I'll be there. If you know a strong woman who raised amazing children on her own, tag her in the comments. Let's celebrate these incredible mothers." The next morning, Alex woke early, his mind racing with plans and possibilities. For the first time in years, his first thought wasn't about Harrington Global's stock price or the day's meetings, but about a baseball game in Evanston on Saturday. He showered and dressed with unusual care, opting for a casual sweater and slacks rather than his usual suit. As he was about to leave for the office, his phone rang. "Victoria, I've been thinking all night," she said without preamble. "About us. About this situation." "Victoria, Please let me finish," she interrupted, her voice steady. "What happened 12 years ago was troubling, but it was before us. Before me. I'm willing to work through this if you are. We can adjust the prenup to address any concerns about the boys' claims. Hire the right PR team to manage the narrative." "His name is Ethan," Alex said quietly. "What?" "His name is Ethan," he repeated. "Not the boy. And this isn't about PR or prenups, Victoria. This is about my son." The silence that followed was heavy with implication. "I see," she finally said. "So you've already decided to upend our lives for a child you just met? A child you weren't even sure was yours until yesterday?" Alex closed his eyes, leaning against the kitchen counter. "He's mine, Victoria. One look at him and I knew. The DNA test is a formality. And what does this mean for us? For our plans?" It was a fair question, one he didn't have a complete answer for yet. "I don't know exactly, but I do know I need to be part of Ethan's life now. I've missed 11 years. I can't miss any more." "At what cost, Alex? Your company needs you. I need you. This wedding can wait," he finished gently. "If you're willing. If not." He trailed off, leaving the alternative unspoken. Victoria's laugh was brittle. "You're actually choosing them over us. Over everything we've built." "I'm not choosing anyone over anyone," Alex replied. "I'm just trying to do the right thing." Finally, after they hung up, Alex sat for a long moment, staring at the skyline view from his penthouse windows. Then he picked up his phone again and called Janet. "I need to reschedule today's meetings," he told her. "And I'd like you to handle the Bloomberg statement about Nextech." "Everything okay, boss?" Janet asked, concern evident in her voice. "No," he admitted. "But it might be eventually. I need to take some personal time. Can we meet for dinner tonight? There are some things I need to discuss about the company's future." That evening, over steaks at Gibson's, Alex told Janet everything. About Sarah. About Ethan. About his determination to be part of his son's life moving forward. Janet listened without interruption, her sharp mind visibly processing the implications. At 52, she'd been with Harrington Global almost from the beginning, rising through the ranks on merit and determination. She'd never married, never had children, pouring her considerable talents into the company instead. If anyone understood the sacrifices made for ambition, it was Janet. "So what are you thinking?" she asked when he'd finished. "Stepping back entirely?" Alex shook his head. "Not entirely, but I need flexibility, time, space to figure out how to be a father to a boy who's grown up without me." Janet nodded thoughtfully. "We could restructure. You as chairman, me as CEO handling day-to-day operations. You'd still be involved in major decisions, strategic direction, but without the daily grind. "You'd do that?" Alex asked, genuinely surprised by her ready solution. Janet smiled wryly. "Alex, I've been running half the company for years while you've been the face. This just makes it official." She took a sip of her wine. "Besides, it's about time Harrington Global had a female CEO. Don't you think?" For the first time since Sarah and Ethan had walked into La Cille, Alex felt something like hope. "I think it's long overdue." By Saturday morning, the restructuring announcement was drafted. Victoria had moved her things out of his penthouse, and Alex was driving himself to Evanston in the least ostentatious car he owned. A 5-year-old Audi he kept for the rare occasions when he didn't want to arrive with a driver. Evanston Westfield was a typical community baseball diamond: aluminum bleachers, chain-link backstop, parents clustered in camping chairs along the baselines. Alex felt conspicuously out of place as he parked and made his way toward the field, scanning the crowd for Sarah. He spotted her near the home team dugout, chatting with another mother. She wore jeans and a navy blue team sweatshirt with Evanston Eagles emblazoned across the front. Her hair was loose today, honey brown waves catching the morning sunlight. She looked relaxed, at home in this community in a way that highlighted how artificial his own world had become. She saw him approaching and excused herself from her conversation. "You came," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "I said I would," he replied simply. An awkward silence fell between them, broken when Ethan emerged from the dugout, already in his uniform. His face lit up when he spotted Alex, and he jogged over, baseball glove in hand. "You made it," Ethan said, his enthusiasm making Alex's heart constrict with a mixture of joy and regret for all the moments he'd missed. "Wouldn't miss it," Alex replied, fighting the urge to ruffle the boy's hair. A gesture that felt simultaneously natural and presumptuous given their new relationship. "Your mom tells me you're quite the pitcher." Ethan shrugged with the false modesty of pre-adolescence. "I'm okay. Coach says I need to work on my control, but my fastball's pretty good." "He's being modest," Sarah interjected. "He struck out 12 batters in the last game." Pride swelled in Alex's chest, an unfamiliar but powerful emotion. "That's incredible." "Mom exaggerates," Ethan said, rolling his eyes, though his pleased smile betrayed him. "I gotta go warm up. You'll watch, right?" "Every pitch," Alex promised. As Ethan jogged back to his teammates, Alex and Sarah made their way to the bleachers. They sat side by side, close but not touching, united in their focus on their son, but separated by years of absence and hurt. "Thank you for inviting me," Alex said quietly. Sarah kept her eyes on the field. "It was Ethan's idea. When I told him you'd texted, he immediately asked if you could come to his game." She paused. "He's been curious about you his whole life." "What did you tell him?" "About me? I mean," she considered this. "The truth, mostly. That you were my college sweetheart. That you weren't ready to be a father when I got pregnant. That you've helped financially but weren't part of our lives." "You didn't tell him what I said?" "The accusations I made." Sarah finally turned to look at him. "He was a child, Alex. He didn't need to know his father thought he was a trap, a burden. He needed to know he was loved. By me, by my family. That was enough." The simple dignity of her response shamed him more than any accusation could have. While he'd been building his empire, she'd been protecting their son. Not just physically and financially, but emotionally. Shielding him from the ugliness of his father's rejection. "I don't deserve your kindness," he said softly. "It wasn't for you," she replied. "It was for him." The game began, and conversation ceased as they both focused on Ethan. Alex watched, mesmerized, as his son took the mound in the top of the first inning. The boy's windup was fluid, his delivery powerful despite his lanky frame. When his first pitch smacked into the catcher's mitt for a called strike, Alex found himself cheering along with the other parents. Throughout the game, he stole glances at Sarah, at the way she bit her lower lip when Ethan faced a tough batter, the way she clapped and called encouragement after every pitch. This was a world she knew intimately, a world he was only now discovering existed. In the stands around them, Other parents chatted comfortably with Sarah, occasionally giving Alex curious looks. He caught fragments of their whispered speculations. Is that Ethan's dad? Where's he been all this time? Isn't that the tech billionaire from the news? By the seventh inning, Ethan had pitched a shutout, allowing only 2 hits. When he struck out the final batter with a curveball that dropped perfectly into the strike zone, the Eagles' dugout erupted in cheers. Alex found himself on his feet, applauding wildly, his chest tight with an emotion he couldn't quite name. After the game, Ethan bounded over, still flushed with victory. Did you see that last pitch? Coach says my curve is getting better. It was perfect, Alex said, meaning it. You were amazing out there. We're going to Gino's for pizza to celebrate, Ethan said, looking between his parents. The whole team. You could come too, if you want. Alex glanced at Sarah, seeking permission. She hesitated, then nodded slightly. If your father doesn't have other plans, he's welcome to join us. No other plans, Alex said quickly. Pizza sounds great. Gino's turned out to be a family-owned pizzeria in downtown Evanston, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and signed photos of local celebrities on the walls. The team commandeered a long table in the back, boys piling in together while parents gathered nearby. Alex found himself seated between Sarah and a father named Dave, who coached the Eagles' batting practice. So you're Ethan's dad, Dave said, offering his hand. He's a great kid. You must be proud. I am, Alex replied, the words feeling both true and unearned. Though I can't take any credit. Sarah's done an amazing job raising him. Dave nodded. She's something else, our Sarah. Nurse manager at Northwestern, team mom, PTA treasurer. Don't know how she does it all. Alex absorbed this information, adding it to the growing picture of the life Sarah had built without him. Nurse manager, not just a nurse, but a leader. Team mom, PTA treasurer. Roles that spoke of community, of rootedness, of the very stability he'd once feared would hold him back. Across the table, Ethan was animatedly recounting his pitching performance to his teammates, his face alight with joy and belonging. Alex watched him, trying to reconcile this confident, happy boy with the burden he'd once imagined a child would be. He has your eyes, Sarah said quietly beside him, following his gaze. And your father's arm. But that smile, that's pure Thompson. My dad had the same one. I wish I'd known your father better, Alex said. They'd only met a handful of times before Mr. Thompson's heart attack during their senior year of college. He would have been a wonderful grandfather, Sarah replied, a hint of sadness in her voice. My mom, too, before the cancer took her. Another pang of regret hit Alex. I'm sorry about your mother. I didn't know. 3 years ago, Sarah said. She lived with us for a while at the end. Ethan was her world. The conversation paused as pizzas arrived, massive deep dish creations that the boys attacked with the ferocity of growing athletes. Alex found himself drawn into discussions with other parents about the baseball season, about the upcoming science fair, about the community fundraiser for new playground equipment at the elementary school. It was a world so different from his boardrooms and charity galas, yet he found himself more engaged, more present than he'd been in years. These people didn't care about his net worth or his company's market share. They cared about their children, their community, the small daily victories and challenges that made up real life. As the celebration wound down, Ethan approached, pizza sauce at the corner of his mouth. Mom says we should head home, but would you maybe want to see my baseball card collection? It's pretty cool. I have a Mickey Mantle rookie card that Grandpa Thompson gave me. Alex looked to Sarah, who nodded. You're welcome to come by for a little while, she said. If you'd like to. I'd like that very much, Alex replied. He followed them in his Audi, driving through tree-lined streets of modest but well-maintained homes until they reached a small craftsman-style house with blue shutters and a wraparound porch. A basketball hoop stood in the driveway, and a well-used bicycle leaned against the garage. Inside, the house was warm and lived in, family photos on the walls, bookshelves overflowing with a mixture of medical texts and young adult novels, a science fair project in progress on the dining room table. It was everything his sterile penthouse wasn't. A home, not just a place to live. My room's upstairs, Ethan said, already heading for the staircase. Come on. Alex followed, noting the growth marks penciled on the wall of the stairwell, the framed school photos showing Ethan's progression from toothless kindergartner to lanky preteen. A life documented, cherished, celebrated in all its ordinary glory. Ethan's room was exactly what you'd expect from an 11-year-old boy. Sports posters on the walls, a desk cluttered with homework and robot parts, a bookshelf filled with science fiction and baseball statistics. And there, on the nightstand, was the Cape Cod photo in a simple frame. Here they are, Ethan said proudly, pulling out a carefully organized binder of baseball cards in protective sleeves. Grandpa Thompson started collecting in the 50s. He gave me his whole collection before he died. As Ethan flipped through the pages, pointing out rare cards and telling stories about the players, Alex found himself thinking about his own father, the factory worker who'd given up his baseball dreams to support his family, who'd worked overtime to pay for Alex's college applications, who'd never lived to see his son's success. What would his father think of him now? Of the choices he'd made? Of the grandson he'd never known? This is the Mickey Mantle, Ethan said, pointing to a card protected in a special hard case. Grandpa got it when he was a kid. It's worth a lot now, but I'd never sell it. It's not just about the value, Alex said, understanding. It's about the connection, the history. Ethan looked up, surprised and pleased. Exactly. Mom says some things are worth more than money. Your mom is a very wise woman, Alex replied, catching Sarah's eye as she appeared in the doorway. Time to wrap it up, buddy, she said. You've got homework to finish before dinner. Ethan carefully returned the binder to its place on his shelf. Will you come to my next game? It's Tuesday after school. I'll be there, Alex promised. And maybe we could do something else sometime? A movie, or the Museum of Science and Industry, if that's okay with your mom. Ethan looked to Sarah, hope written across his face. After a moment, she nodded. We could arrange something for next weekend, perhaps. Awesome, Ethan exclaimed. Then, with the impulsive affection of childhood, he hugged Alex again. Longer this time, less awkward. I'm glad you came today. Me too, buddy, Alex said, his voice rough with emotion. More than you know. Downstairs, as Ethan settled at the dining room table with his homework, Sarah walked Alex to the door. Thank you, he said simply, for today, for letting me into his life. He's happy you're here, Sarah replied. That's what matters to me. Alex hesitated, then asked the question that had been on his mind all day. And you? How do you feel about me being here? Sarah considered this, her expression thoughtful. Cautious, she said finally. Hopeful for Ethan's sake, but cautious. That's fair, Alex acknowledged. More than fair, given everything. What about your fiancée? Sarah asked. Victoria, right? I saw the announcement in the Tribune business section. Alex sighed. That's complicated. She's having trouble adjusting to the idea of an instant family. Not everyone is cut out for parenthood, Sarah observed without judgment. Especially parenthood that arrives fully formed at 11 years old. No, Alex agreed. Not everyone is. The unspoken comparison hung between them. Sarah, who had embraced motherhood alone and built her life around it, versus Victoria, who saw Ethan as an inconvenience to be managed. Well, Sarah said after a moment, Ethan and I will be fine whatever happens. We always have been. The quiet dignity of her statement hit Alex like a physical blow. They had been fine without him. They hadn't needed him. But they'd welcomed him anyway, given him a chance he hadn't earned. I know you will, he said. But I'd like to be part of that fine, if you'll let me. Not just for Ethan, but for all of us. Sarah's expression softened slightly. One step at a time, Alex. Let's see how the next few weeks go. It was neither a rejection nor an embrace, just a practical approach to an unprecedented situation. Typical Sarah, he thought with a rush of admiration. Always grounded, always real. One step at a time, he agreed. As he drove back to his penthouse, the contrast between the life he'd built and the one he'd abandoned had never been more stark. His home was all sleek surfaces and designer furniture, impressive views and empty spaces. No growth marks on the walls. No science projects on the table. No evidence that a life was being lived, only that success had been achieved. His phone rang Janet, with questions about Monday's board meeting where they would announce the restructuring. He answered, his mind still half in Evanston, in that blue house with the wraparound porch. The board's going to have questions, Janet was saying. About why you're stepping back. About Ethan. Let them ask, Alex replied, surprising himself with how little he cared about their opinion. I'll tell them the truth. I've missed 11 years of my son's life. I won't miss any more. And Victoria? She's been calling the office. Alex sighed. I'll handle Victoria. You focus on the transition plan. After they hung up, he sat in his parked car, staring up at the gleaming tower that housed his penthouse. Once, this view had filled him with pride, tangible proof of how far he'd come from Blue Island, from his working-class roots. Now it just felt hollow. He thought of Sarah's small blue house, of Ethan's room with its baseball cards and robot parts, of the community they'd built in Evanston, of the life he could have been part of if he'd made different choices 12 years ago. It was too late to undo the past, but perhaps it wasn't too late to create a different future. If you believe in the power of redemption and second chances, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that heal the heart. The board meeting on Monday was exactly as difficult as Janet had predicted. The 12 members of Harrington Global's board, mostly older men with decades in business, listened in stunned silence as Alex announced his intention to step back to chairman while promoting Janet to CEO. This is unexpected, said Richard Keller, the longest-serving board member. May we ask what prompted this decision? Alex met his gaze steadily. I recently discovered I have an 11-year-old son. I've missed enough of his life already. I won't miss any more. Murmurs rippled around the table. Several board members exchanged glances. A son, Richard repeated. I wasn't aware you had children, Alex. Neither was I until recently, Alex replied with a wry smile. His mother and I were together before Harrington Global existed. When she told me she was pregnant, I made choices I'm not proud of. Now I have the chance to make different ones. And this boy, he's definitely yours? Asked another board member, his tone skeptical. Alex felt a flash of anger. His name is Ethan. And yes, he's definitely mine. The DNA test confirmed what was obvious from the moment I saw him. What about Victoria? Richard asked. The engagement announcement just ran last month. Victoria and I have decided to take a step back, Alex said diplomatically. She needs time to process this change in circumstances. What he didn't say was that their last conversation had devolved into an ultimatum, her or them. Victoria couldn't understand why he couldn't simply provide financial support while maintaining their life as planned. Why he felt the need to be actively involved in Ethan's daily life. Why Sarah still mattered to him after all these years. I hope you'll all support Janet in her new role, Alex continued, steering the conversation back to business. She's been the operational backbone of this company for years. It's time she had the title to match. Janet, seated beside him, nodded her thanks. At 52, with her silver-streaked dark hair and impeccable suits, she projected exactly the kind of confident competence the company needed. The board members knew it, even if some were reluctant to acknowledge the changing of the guard. By the end of the meeting, the transition was approved, though not without reservations expressed. As people filed out, Richard lingered, waiting until they were alone before speaking. I've known you a long time, Alex, he said, since you were pitching your first startup with nothing but ambition and student loan debt. I've never seen you walk away from anything you've built. I'm not walking away, Alex corrected. I'm making room for something else. Something more important. Richard studied him. This woman, the mother, is she part of the equation? Alex considered the question. Sarah is Ethan's mother. We're figuring out how to co-parent after 11 years apart. That's the focus right now. But there's still something there, Richard observed shrewdly. I can see it in your face when you say her name. Alex didn't confirm or deny this. The truth was, he wasn't sure himself what he felt for Sarah now. Respect, certainly. Admiration for the life she'd built, the mother she'd become, and something deeper, something that had never fully disappeared despite the years and hurt between them. Just be careful, Richard advised. Business, I understand. Hearts are more complicated territory. I'm learning that, Alex replied honestly. Over the next few weeks, Alex settled into a new rhythm. 3 days a week at the office, working closely with Janet on the transition. The rest of his time in Evanston, at baseball games, science fair preparations, and gradually, more integrated into Sarah and Ethan's daily life. He found himself looking forward to Tuesday night dinners at their house, where Ethan would regale him with school stories and Sarah would occasionally join the conversation with her quiet observations. He discovered his son was not just athletic but brilliant, a natural at mathematics and engineering, with a robot design that had qualified for the state competition. He gets that from you, Sarah remarked one evening as they watched Ethan fine-tuning his robot's programming. That ability to see patterns, to understand systems. I was always more of a people person. You still are, Alex replied. The way you connect with your patients, with the other parents. With Ethan. That's a gift I never had. Sarah looked at him, surprised by the compliment. You're doing better than you think. With Ethan, he talks about you all the time now. The simple statement filled Alex with a warmth no business success had ever provided. He's easy to love, he said softly. Yes, Sarah agreed. He is. As May turned to June, school ended and summer began. Alex adjusted his schedule further, working remotely when possible to maximize his time in Evanston. He bought a house there, not ostentatious but comfortable, with a backyard perfect for playing catch and a room decorated specifically for Ethan's overnight visits, which had begun with Sarah's cautious approval. Victoria made one last attempt at reconciliation, appearing at his penthouse unannounced one evening when he happened to be in the city for meetings. I've been thinking, she said, as poised and beautiful as ever in her designer dress. Perhaps I was hasty. We could make this work, Alex. Shared custody arrangements are common these days. The boy Ethan could visit on holidays, maybe summers. We wouldn't have to upend everything. Alex studied her, seeing clearly what he hadn't before, how her vision of life was all surface, all appearance. How different it was from the authentic warmth of Sarah's blue house with its wraparound porch. I'm sorry, Victoria, he said gently, but that's not the kind of father I want to be. Not anymore. You're choosing them, she said, her voice tight with disbelief. After everything we built together. I'm choosing to be present, Alex corrected. For my son. For myself. The man I want to be wouldn't be satisfied with holidays and summers. After she left, Alex didn't feel the regret he'd expected. Instead, he felt lighter, clearer, as if the last piece of his old life had finally fallen away, making room for something new. The state science fair fell on a sweltering July weekend. Alex sat with Sarah in the crowded gymnasium of a Chicago high school, watching Ethan present his robot design to the judges. Their shoulders touched occasionally in the cramped seating, neither pulling away. He's amazing, Alex whispered as Ethan confidently answered a complex question about his programming algorithm. How did we make someone so brilliant? Sarah smiled, her eyes never leaving their son. Half your brains, half my common sense, and a whole lot of love and encouragement. When Ethan won second place overall, an extraordinary achievement for a middle schooler competing against high school students, his first action was to scan the crowd for his parents. Both of them. The joy on his face when he spotted them cheering was worth more than any business deal Alex had ever closed. That evening, they celebrated with dinner at a restaurant nicer than their usual pizza place, but not so fancy that Ethan felt uncomfortable. As they waited for dessert, Ethan excused himself to the restroom, leaving his parents alone. I've been meaning to ask you something, Alex said, gathering his courage. The company has a box at Wrigley Field. I thought maybe the three of us could go to a Cubs game next weekend. If you'd like to, that is." Sarah looked at him thoughtfully. "Are you asking me on a date, Alex Harrington?" "I'm asking if you'd consider it," he replied honestly. "Not for Ethan's sake this time. For ours." She was quiet for a moment, tracing the rim of her water glass with one finger. "We're not the same people we were in Boston," she said finally. "You need to understand that. I'm not that girl anymore." "I know," Alex said. "That's part of why I'm asking. I admire who you've become, Sarah. Your strength, your compassion, the life you've built. I'd like the chance to know this version of you better." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "The Cubs are having a good season. Is that a yes?" he asked, hope rising in his chest. "It's a maybe," she replied, but her eyes were warm. "One step at a time, remember?" Ethan returned, and the moment passed, but something had shifted between them. A door opened, just a crack. The Cubs game the following weekend wasn't technically a date. Not with Ethan between them, excitedly pointing out players and explaining statistics. But afterward, when Ethan went home with his friend Marcus for a sleepover, Alex and Sarah found themselves alone, walking along the lakeshore as the summer evening settled around them. "Thank you for today," Alex said, "for giving me another chance. Not just with Ethan, but with you." Sarah was quiet for a moment, watching the waves lap against the shore. "You know what the hardest part was?" she asked finally. "Not the pregnancy, not even raising him alone. It was believing I wasn't enough. That our child wasn't enough to make you stay." The raw honesty of her statement hit Alex like a physical blow. "Sarah, let me finish," she said gently. "For years I carried that. The feeling that I was somehow defective, incomplete. That if I'd been enough, you would have chosen us." "It was never about you," Alex said, his voice rough with emotion. "It was my fear, my selfishness. You were always enough. More than enough. I just couldn't see it then." "I know that now," Sarah replied. "It took time, and a lot of work, but I know my worth. Ethan helped me find it again. Being his mother, seeing myself through his eyes, it healed something in me." They had stopped walking, facing each other in the golden light of sunset. Alex took a chance and reached for her hand. She let him take it. "I don't expect you to forget what happened," he said, "or to forgive it easily. But I want you to know that I see you now, Sarah. All of you. And you're the most remarkable person I've ever known." She looked up at him, her eyes searching his face for sincerity. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she squeezed his hand gently. "One step at a time," she reminded him, but there was warmth in her voice now, and something that might have been hope. Summer flowed into fall. Ethan started middle school, joining the advanced science track and making the baseball team. Alex continued dividing his time between Chicago and Evanston, though the balance shifted increasingly toward the latter. His penthouse went on the market, a decision that felt more symbolic than practical. He and Sarah moved forward cautiously, rediscovering each other through shared parenting and occasional evenings alone. Their first real kiss came on a crisp October night, standing on her porch after a parent-teacher conference where they both burst with pride at Ethan's glowing reviews. "I should go," Alex had said, reluctant to leave but respectful of the boundaries they'd established. "Or you could stay," Sarah had replied softly, "for coffee." The kiss that followed was both familiar and new. Echoes of their younger selves mingled with the people they'd become. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "Just coffee," Sarah clarified, though her eyes suggested possibilities beyond that. "Just coffee," Alex agreed. "For now." By Thanksgiving, "for now" had evolved into something deeper. Alex joined Sarah and Ethan for the holiday, along with Sarah's aunt and uncle from Milwaukee and a handful of close friends who had become their extended family over the years. Seated at the dining room table of the Blue House, surrounded by laughter and warmth, Alex realized he'd found what had been missing from his life of wealth and achievement: connection, belonging, love without conditions or expectations. After dinner, as others chatted in the living room, he helped Sarah with the dishes. a domestic task he'd never imagined finding satisfaction in. "I've been thinking," he said, drying a serving platter she handed him. "About Christmas." "What about it?" Sarah asked, up to her elbows in soapy water. "I thought we might go to Cape Cod," he suggested. "The three of us. There's a little in that's open year-round, right on the beach where we took that photo. It won't be warm enough for swimming, but it's beautiful in winter. Peaceful." Sarah looked at him, surprised. "You want to go back there? After all this time?" "I want to make new memories," Alex explained. "With you and Ethan. To honor where we started, but also to celebrate where we are now. Where we might be going." She studied him for a long moment, then smiled, that same smile that had captivated him in a Boston University lecture hall 25 years earlier. "I'd like that," she said simply. Cape Cod in December was exactly as Alex remembered and completely different. The same windswept beaches and salt-weathered cottages, but now experienced through the lens of hard-won wisdom and second chances. They stayed in a suite at the inn, Ethan in his own room adjoining his parents'. They walked the winter beaches, flew kites in the brisk ocean wind, explored small shops in Provincetown, and ate seafood by roaring fires. In the evenings, Ethan would retreat to his room with books or video games, giving Alex and Sarah time alone, to talk, to reconnect, to rebuild what had been broken. On Christmas Eve, after Ethan had gone to bed, excited about the presents waiting for morning, Alex led Sarah to the beach. The night was clear and cold, stars brilliant above the dark Atlantic. He'd arranged for a small fire pit to be set up near the water's edge, with blankets and thermoses of hot chocolate waiting. "This is where we took that photo," he said as they settled by the fire. "The one Ethan keeps by his bed." Sarah nodded, looking out at the waves. "I remember. You'd just gotten that internship at the tech startup. We were celebrating. We had so many dreams that summer," Alex mused. "Some came true, just not the way we expected." "Not the way we expected," Sarah agreed, leaning against his shoulder. "But maybe the way they needed to." Alex took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "I've been carrying something with me for months now, waiting for the right moment." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "This isn't the ring I would have chosen back then, all flash and status. This is simpler, truer, like what I feel for you now." Sarah's eyes widened as he opened the box, revealing a platinum band with a single perfect diamond, flanked by two smaller sapphires. "The sapphires are for Ethan," Alex explained, "for the gift he is to both of us. The diamond is for you, strong, brilliant, irreplaceable." "Alex," Sarah whispered, her voice catching. "I'm not asking you to forget the past," he said, taking her hand. "I'm asking if you believe in our future, if you'll take this journey with me, not as the people we were, but as the people we've become. If you'll marry me, Sarah, be my wife, my partner, my compass." Tears glistened in her eyes, reflecting the firelight. "Are you sure? This life, my life, it's not what you walked away from all those years ago. It's ordinary in so many ways. School meetings and mortgage payments and community fundraisers. It's extraordinary in all the ways that matter," Alex replied. "It's real. It's grounded. It's filled with love and purpose. Everything my so-called success was missing." Sarah looked at the ring, then back at his face. "We'd need to take it slow. Make sure Ethan adjusts. He's excited about us dating, but marriage is different. We'll take all the time you need," Alex promised. "I'm not going anywhere. Not ever again." She smiled then, a smile that held both joy and the wisdom of hard lessons learned. "In that case, yes. I'll marry you, Alex Harrington." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her close for a kiss that tasted of salt air and second chances, Alex felt a sense of homecoming more profound than any he'd ever known. The path that had led them here was winding and painful, marked by mistakes and regrets, but it had brought them to this moment, older, wiser, ready to build something that would last. They told Ethan on Christmas morning, after presents had been opened and breakfast eaten. His reaction was everything they could have hoped for: excitement, a few thoughtful questions, and finally, a group hug that left them all laughing and a little teary. "Does this mean we'll all live together?" he asked. "In the blue house? If that's what you want," Alex replied, looking to Sarah for confirmation. "Or we could find a new place, one that's ours together." Ethan considered this. "I like our house, but maybe we could add on that sunroom Mom's always wanted, and a better workshop for my robots." Sarah laughed. "I see you've been making plans already. Just thinking ahead," Ethan said with a grin that was pure Alex. "Like Dad taught me." Dad. The word still hit Alex like a revelation every time Ethan used it. A title he hadn't earned but was working every day to deserve. They were married the following spring in the backyard of the Blue House. Not a lavish society wedding, but an intimate gathering of the people who mattered most. Ethan stood as Alex's best man, beaming with pride in his first suit. Janet came from Chicago, along with a few colleagues who had become friends. Sarah's nursing team and the baseball parents formed a supportive circle around them. Victoria sent a surprisingly gracious gift, a handcrafted glass sculpture with a note that read simply, "Sometimes the universe knows better than we do." She had found her own happiness with a diplomat who shared her love of art and travel. As they exchanged vows under an arch of spring flowers, Alex looked at the woman before him. Not the young student he'd abandoned, but the strong, compassionate woman who had built a beautiful life from the ashes of his rejection, who had raised their son with love and wisdom, who had found it in her heart to give him a second chance he hadn't deserved. "I promise to cherish every day with you and Ethan," he vowed, his voice steady with conviction. "To never again mistake what matters for what glitters. To be the husband and father you both deserve." Sarah's eyes shone with tears and joy as she made her own promises. To partner with him in all things, to build their future together, to embrace this new chapter with open hearts. Later, as they danced under strings of lights in the yard of the home that was now truly theirs, Alex held Sarah close, marveling at the journey that had brought them here. "Happy?" she asked, looking up at him with the smile that still made his heart skip. "Beyond words," he replied honestly. "You and Ethan. You're everything I never knew I needed." Across the yard, Ethan was teaching Janet how to throw a proper curveball, both of them laughing at her awkward attempts. The sight filled Alex with a contentment deeper than any business success had ever provided. 1 year later, they gathered at La Cille, the restaurant where their reunion had begun. The maitre d' led them to the same table Alex had occupied that fateful night, now set for 3 instead of 2. "I can't believe it's been 2 years, Sarah said, looking out at the same view of Lake Michigan and the Chicago skyline. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes like another lifetime." "A lot has changed," Alex agreed, watching Ethan study the menu with the serious consideration of a 13-year-old with an adult's appetite. Indeed it had. The Blue House now boasted the sunroom Sarah had always wanted and the workshop Ethan had requested. Harrington Global continued to thrive under Janet's leadership, with Alex providing strategic guidance while maintaining his primary residence in Evanston. He'd established a foundation focused on supporting single parents and their children, inspired by Sarah's journey. And most importantly, they had become a family. Not perfect, not without occasional tensions and adjustments, but solid, real, built on truth and forgiveness and second chances. "Dad, can I get the steak?" Ethan asked, looking up from the menu with hopeful eyes. Alex smiled. "Of course. It's a celebration, after all." As they ordered, Alex couldn't help but reflect on the symmetry of the moment. Back where it all began, but with everything transformed. The maitre d', who had once witnessed their dramatic reunion, now greeted them warmly as regular guests. The table that had been the site of his world collapsing was now the setting for a family dinner. "I have something for both of you," Alex said after their appetizers arrived. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out 2 small wrapped packages. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "It's not our anniversary yet." "Consider it a different kind of anniversary," Alex replied. 2 years since we found our way back to each other. Since our family became complete." Ethan tore into his package with teenage enthusiasm, revealing a vintage baseball card in a protective case. His eyes widened. "Is this Ted Williams, 1954?" Alex confirmed. "To go with your grandfather's collection." "This is amazing," Ethan exclaimed, carefully examining the card. "Thanks, Dad." Sarah opened her gift more slowly, her breath catching as she revealed a delicate gold locket. Inside were two photos, one of Ethan as a baby, the other a recent family portrait from their wedding. "Alex," she whispered, touching the locket gently. "It's beautiful. I wanted you to have something that honors both our past and our present," he explained, helping her fasten it around her neck. "All the chapters of our story." As dinner progressed, they talked about everyday things: Ethan's upcoming baseball tournament, Sarah's promotion to director of nursing, the expansion of Alex's foundation to include college scholarships for children of single parents. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and the comfortable shorthand of a family that had found its rhythm. Looking at his wife and son in the soft lighting of La Cille, Alex felt a profound gratitude wash over him. 2 years ago, he had been a successful man by the world's standards, wealthy, powerful, engaged to a woman who complemented his carefully constructed image. But he had been hollow inside, building an empire while neglecting his soul. He had spent the first half of his life building an empire of glass and steel, accumulating wealth and power at the cost of what truly mattered. Now he was spending the second half building something far more valuable: a family, a legacy of love and presence, a home in the truest sense of the word. In the end, the billionaire didn't just gain a family. He found his way home. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to make things right. And remember to follow Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that remind us what truly matters in life. Because sometimes the universe has a way of bringing us exactly what we need, even when it arrives in ways we never expected. Sometimes our greatest mistakes can lead to our most profound redemptions. And sometimes the path home is longer and more winding than we ever imagined, but all the more beautiful for the journey.